Klayim Parak Aleph Mishnah Aleph. Hachitim v'hazunin enon klayim zeh b'zeh. The halachas of Klayim prohibit planting different kinds of species together or growing them next to each other. This issur applies only to plants in different species, but not to plants that are merely different varieties of the same species. Again, we'll repeat that it should be noted that the Torah system of classifying species is not the same as modern scientific systems of classification. It's possible for two plants that do not look alike to be considered members of the same species in regard to climate because of their internal qualities, like their nutritional merits, are the same. This was determined by the Chachamim, sometimes from a Kabbalah Ish Mipi Ish from Moshe Rabbeinu from Hasinai, or they knew it from Ruach HaKodesh. So the Mishnah lists 6 pairs of plants. Although the members of each pair are somewhat different from each other, the Mishnah teaches that both are considered part of the same species and are therefore not climate with each other. They are, however, climate with members of any of the other pairs. Wheat and darnel are not climate with each other. I don't know what darnel is. A weed that grows in wheat fields. It looks so much like wheat, like the wheat plant, until the ear appears, that it's sometimes referred to as false wheat. According to the Mesorah over here, it's irregular form of wheat that developed in the generation before the flood, when the earth began producing mutated forms, which is why it's called zunin, or lashon of znus. The Rav says, "Lafishek shehishchisu dar hamabel es darkam ha'isa ha'aretz gam hi mezanes periseho v'yizerim chitim u'meitzia zunim hilkach lehava klaim emachitim." It's not climb with chitim, avlam sharmin to a hava climb. The afagav lechazil ma'achal adam, even though it's not edible for humans. Darnel is not fit for human consumption. Nevertheless, the laws of climate apply to it because it's used as feed for certain kinds of birds. However, a plant that's not fit for even birds or animals is not subject to the halachas of climate at all. Hasa'orim v'shibay l'shul, barley and oats. The translation of shibay l'shul as oats follows the Rav and the Rosh, also based on Rashi and Psachim. However, the Rambam doesn't really agree to that. Although oats and barley do not look like each other, they may still be considered one species for the reason explained earlier, as the Gemara in Psachim and Lamed Hey puts them together. Hakusmin v'hashifain, spelt and rye, hapul v'hasapir, the broad bean and the Nile cowpea. This is based on the Rambam's Pirish. The broad bean is also known as the fava bean. The Nile cowpea is a type of pea that grows in Egypt. Hapurkedon v'hatoifach, the grass pea and the red grass pea. Toifach we had mentioned in Masechta Peah, the Rambam and the Rav, as well as explained by others. That's how they learned Porkedan and Toifach. Upail halavan v'hashu'uim, the white bean and the hyacinth bean, enam klaim zebezeh, are not climate with each other. There are different opinions about the identities of the plants mentioned in the Mishnah and the next 3 Mishnayos, so we're going to try to follow the identifications of the Rav and the Rambam wherever possible. However, even the translations of the terms used by these Mefarshim are sometimes subject to uncertainty. So we're not going to get involved right now in what each one is, but it would be a lot of fun to go through each one to see exactly what everything is. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Hakishus from alafafoin enon klaim zebezeh. The regular cucumber and the Kirby cucumber are not climate with each other. Our translation follows the Rav and the Yiddish translation of his terms that appear in the Yachon Boyaz of the Mishnayos as well as the Tzaras Yisrael. The regular cucumber is longer and blander than the Kirby. Kirby is the small ones. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Klein, Rabbi Yehuda says they are climate with each other. Why? Doesn't say here, but ein halachic Rabbi Yehuda. Chazaris v'chazaris galim, lettuce and mountain lettuce. Chazaris in Psachim Daf Lamed Tes is defined as chasa, which Rashi defines as lettuce. Mountain lettuce is lettuce that grows wild in the mountains. Chazaris or chazaris galim. Galim are waves. Maybe it grows like waves. Ulshan v'ulshay sada, chicory and wild chicory. Kreishim v'kreishay sada, leeks and wild leeks. Kuzbar v'kuzbar sada, coriander and wild coriander. Plants of a single species and the fruits can look different depending on whether they are cultivated in a garden or grow wild, depending on the location and type of soil in which they grow. Nevertheless, the different varieties are still considered part of the same species. Chardal v'chardal mitri, mustard and Egyptian mustard. The Mishnah, which was composed in Eretz Yisrael, refers to the mustard that grew there simply as mustard. An Egyptian mustard, maybe it was a little sharper, maybe it was less sharp. Udlas hamitri v'aramutza, Egyptian gourd, and the ember gourd. Ramutza is a bitter variety of gourd that is sweetened by being buried in hot embers, remets. It is therefore known as the ramutza. Upaila mitri v'acharov, the Egyptian bean and the carob bean. This does not refer to the fruit of the carob tree, but a type of bean that was called carob because its pod resembles the carob. Einam k'layim zeh b'zeh, these are not k'layim with each other. Mishnah Gimel, halefes v'hanofot, the turnip and the radish. There are two species are classified as one with regard to k'layim because the leaves are very similar. Hakrov v'hatrevtor, the cabbage and the wild cabbage. Hatradim v'halu'unim, spinach beets and sorrels. The spinach beets, known as chard, is a member of the beet family. It's a leafy vegetable and is grown for its leaves, not its roots. Sorrel is a leafy herb that is often cultivated as a leaf vegetable. In Europe, this was used to make a green soup or drink known in Yiddish as schav, green borscht. Okay. Einam k'layim zeh b'zeh, they are not k'layim with each other. The members of each pair are not k'layim with each other, but are k'layim with any of the other plants mentioned in these mishnayos. Ha'isif Rebbe Kiva added hashum v'hashumanis, garlic and wild garlic, habatal v'abetaltal, onion and wild onion, hatormos v'aploislois, and the Egyptian lupine and the wild lupine. Einam k'layim zeh b'zeh, are not k'layim with each other. The Tanakama, however, considers these pairs to be k'layim with each other. Mishnah Daled, Uba Elon, and for trees, Hagasan v'krustumlin, pears and krustumlin. What is this? The Mishnah now deals with k'layim as it relates to trees. The issur of k'layim is different for trees than for plants such as grains, vegetables, and beans. There's no issur to plant the seed of two fruit trees together, as they are in the case of plants. The only issur is to graft one species of trees onto another. To graft means to take part of one tree, generally a branch, and make a cut in another tree, insert the branch into the cut, and bind it to the tree in such a way that the branch eventually grows to the tree. When the branch of one species is grafted onto the trunk of another species, the branch continues to produce the type of fruit it did before it was grafted, sometimes with small changes. So the Mishnah lists pairs of trees that may be grafted together because they're regarded as members of the same species. So Uba Elon, and for trees, Ha'agasan v'krustumlin, pears and krustumlin. It's a kind of small pear which resembles a walnut. Prishim v'uzradim, quinces and sorb apples. That would be based on Rashi and Brachas on Daf Mem Amud Beis. That would touch them. Sorb apples, Einam k'layim b'zeh b'zeh, are not k'layim with each other. Hatapuach v'hachazrad, an apple and a chazrad. It's a type of apple that grows in the forest and was used to feed pigs. So the Mishnah now lists pairs of trees that resemble each other and might therefore be thought to be the same species, that they're regarded as different species, and therefore may not be grafted together. So tapuach v'chazra, the apple and this wild apple, aparsikim v'hashkedim, peaches and almonds. Peaches are similar to almonds in a number of ways. When peaches first emerge, they resemble the almond fruit. Also, a peach's seed, which are inside its hard pit, resemble almond nuts. Rashizofin v'harimin, jujubes and thorn jujubes. Even though they are similar to each other, k'layim zeh b'zeh are k'layim with each other. The regular jujube produces large fruit, and the thorn of the wild jujube produces small fruit. Jujube is Jujube. Okay, maybe one day we'll give a shir on all these different fruits. Mishnah Hey. Hatznoin v'hanofot hachardal v'halafson udlas yivanis imamitzvus v'ramutza afal pishadayim zelazeh k'layim zeh b'zeh. Having listed pairs of trees that are k'layim with each other, despite seeming to be the same species, our Mishnah lists pairs of plants that are k'layim with each other, even though they seem to be from the same species. Tznoin v'hanofot, radish and nofots. The radish and nofots are similar in the appearance of their fruits, their bulbs and leaves. Nevertheless, they are k'layim because they're very different in taste. Kilei Zorim suggests that the nofots of our Mishnah may be a plant called a rapa, or a rapeseed. Hachardal v'halafsan, mustard and charlock mustard. Udalas yivanis imamitzvus v'ramutza, the Greek gourd with either the Egyptian gourd or the ember gourd. In Mishnah Beis, we learned that the Egyptian gourd and ember gourd are not k'layim with each other. Here we learned that both are k'layim with the Greek gourd, with the Udalas yivanis. So alpha pisha daimon zelazeh, even though they're very similar to each other, k'layim zeh b'zeh, they are also to be planted together. We've seen many examples in the preceding 5 Mishnayos of plants that are k'layim with each other, and many examples of plants that are not. A summary of the rules and principles is, and you could look in the Rambam, Hilchos Kelaim Per Gimel, and the Chazon Ish there as well. And it's going to be like this. Plants of the same species, as determined by the Chachamim, are never Kelaim with each other. This is true even if they look as though they belong to different species, for example, because of differences in how or where they grow. Examples of this are found in the Mishnah, like Ulshin v'Ulshei Soda, lettuce and mountain lettuce, which was the Chazeres v'Chazeres Galim. Now, you also have plants of different species, as determined by the Chachamim, are Kelaim with each other, even if they look similar. However, if they are so similar that they look completely to be from the same species, they are considered one species and are not subject to the Yisur Kelaim. The Yerushalmi and our Mishnah teaches that it's not necessary for them to look alike in every feature. Even if they resemble each other strongly only in their fruits or only in their leaves, they are permitted to be together. However, if the taste of their fruits is very different, they are Kelaim even if their leaves and fruits look similar. Okay, Mishnah Vav. Haze'eva HaKelav. The previous two Mishnayos listed trees and plants that may not be grafted or planted together, even though they resemble each other. The term Kelaim applies not only to trees and plants, but also to animals. It's also to breed different species of animals with each other. This is because the pasuk says, "Behem techol esarbia Kelaim." Your animals you shall not mate in a mixture of breeds. There's another isser concerning mixing of animals of different species of lesachresh b'shar b'chamor yachtav. You shall not plow with an ox or donkey together. This will be discussed further in Parak Ches. So our Mishnah lists 7 pairs of animals in which the members of each pair resemble each other, but are nonetheless regarded as different species that may not be bred together. As the Eva HaKelav, a wolf and a dog, Kelav HaKufri v'Hashual, the village dog and the fox. The village dog is a small breed of dog raised by villagers similar in size to a fox. Ha'izim v'Hatzvaim, goats and gazelles. Tzvaim are gazelles. Generally we would translate tzvaim as deer. Ha'ya'elim v'Arechelim. Ye'elam are the ibexes, the ones with the big horns, and ewes, female sheep. The same would be, although the Mishnah specifies the male ibex and the female sheep, the Isser applies to the female ibex and the male sheep as well. Hasus v'hapared v'chamor, the horse and the mule and the donkey. A mule is the product of a union between a horse and a donkey. It's therefore Kelaim with both. Hachamar v'ha'aroid, the donkey and the wild donkey, aval pisha daimon zelazeh Kelaim zebazeh. Even though they are similar to each other, they are Kelaim with each other. Okay, Mishnah Zayin. Ein meviin ilan be'ilan, yarek be'yarek, v'lo ilan be'yarek, v'lo yarek be'ilan, Rabbi Yehuda matir yarek be'ilan. What's this? We learned in Mishnah Daled that it's forbidden to graft one species of tree onto another. The Mishnah defines the Isra of grafting. We may not bring, which means to graft, a tree onto a different kind of tree. This Isra applies only to grafts in which at least one of the trees is a fruit tree. If neither tree is a fruit tree, then it's going to be mutter, as we mentioned previously. Yarek be'yarek, nor a vegetable onto a different kind of vegetable. The Torah says, Tishmeru, the prohibition against planting your field Kelaim means that one may not plant a field with a mixture of seeds. However, by teaching this prohibition together with the Isser against mating two kinds of animals, the Torah also teaches that just as the Isser of mating your animals refers to physically joining two animals from different species together, so too the Isser regarding planting your fields refers also to physically joining and grafting one species onto another. So with regard to plants, there are two Isurim, planting them together and grafting them together. As we mentioned earlier by Mishnah Daled, the only Isur regarding to trees is grafting. Planting the seeds of different trees together would be mutter. V'lo ilan be'yarik v'lo yarik be'ilan. Nor are you allowed to plant a tree onto a vegetable or a vegetable onto a tree. Rabbi Yehuda matir yarik be'ilan. Rabbi Yehuda permits grafting a vegetable onto a tree. Rabbi Yehuda is matir grafting vegetables to trees and trees to vegetables. According to Rabbi Yehuda, since grafts between trees and vegetables do not produce a significant merging of their plant tissue, they're not considered real grafts. I guess it's too hard. They don't grow into each other, so it's not anything. Mishnah Ches. Ein noitin yerakos b'seich sadin shel shikma. The Mishnah provides examples of various forbidden grafts mentioned in the previous Mishnah. It begins with grafting vegetables to trees and trees to vegetables, and concludes with examples of grafting vegetables to vegetables. Our Mishnah follows the Tanakama of the previous Mishnah, who answers grafting vegetables to trees and trees to vegetables, because if it would be according to Rabbi Yehuda, then it's mutter to graft a yarek be'ilan. We may not plant vegetables inside the stump of a sycamore tree. The sycamore of the Mishnah is a member of the fig family. It produces long, thick branches that are used as wooden beams. At a certain point in its growth, the tree is cut down to a stump between 3 and 10 tvachim high. The trunk grows thicker as a result, and even more branches grow out of it. The stump is known as a sadan shel shikma. Planting vegetables inside a sycamore stump is considered grafting a vegetable onto a tree because it's a fig tree, which would be forbidden. Ein markiven pegam al gabe kidal levana, nor may we graft rue onto white cassia. Rue is an herb with a strong smell. White cassia is a type of tree. Although rue was not generally regarded as something worth keeping, it is nevertheless included in the Isser of grafting. Additionally, the Mishnah teaches that a white cassia is regarded as a tree, although it's probably some kind of bush. Because, for these are instances of grafting a vegetable onto a tree. We may not plant a branch of a fig tree inside a chatzuv, in order to cool the chatzuv. The chatzuv is a plant in the onion family whose roots grow straight down into the ground without branching. It was used by Yeshua to mark the boundaries of each shevet in Eretz Yisrael. The fig branch cools down the chatzuv, which is very hot. Presumably, this means that the branch weakens the sharp taste of the chatzuv. Although the fig branch bonds only weakly with the chatzuv, it is not inserted for the purpose of growing figs, but simply to reduce the sharpness of the chatzuv. It is nevertheless considered to be a graft and would be aser. Nor may we insert the branch of a grapevine into a watermelon plant, so that the melon should inject its water into it. Although the branch receives the majority of its nutrients from the vine to which it's still attached and merely benefits a little from the watermelon's moisture, inserting it into the watermelon's plant is considered klayim. For these are instances of grafting a tree onto a vegetable. We may not put gourd seed into a mallow plant, so that the mallow will protect it, because that's the case of grafting a vegetable onto a vegetable. The mallow plant keeps the gourd seeds moist and protects them until they take root. Although this was not done to improve the quality of the fruits produced, but only to benefit one of the plants in some other way, the Mishnah teaches that it's nevertheless considered grafting a vegetable to a vegetable and is asur. Mishnah Tes. If someone buries a bundle of turnips or a bundle of radishes in the ground under a grapevine in order to store them, turnips and radishes are typically tied in bundles once they are harvested and ready to be used. When someone places tied bundles in the ground, it's clear that he doesn't want them to take root and grow. So burying them in the ground is therefore not considered planting. If some of the leaves of the turnips or radishes are exposed, the leaves of a turnip and a radish grow out of the top of the bulb, so the entire bulb can be buried in the ground while the leaves stick out above the ground. The condition that the leaves stick out above the ground is not needed for most of the halachas of the Mishnah that the Mishnah will now mention. It's important only for the last halacha, as we'll explain. He doesn't need to be concerned about klayim, even though he buries them next to a grapevine. Although it's forbidden to plant turnips or radishes next to a grapevine, it's mutter to bury them there, since burying bundles for storage is not considered a planting. Therefore, even if they did take root and grow, they did not become forbidden as kile hakerem. V'lo mishum shvius, and he doesn't need to be concerned about violating the prohibition against planting during Shemitah. Shemitah is the 7th year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle. The name of this year is technically Shvius, but it's more commonly known today as Shemitah. During Shemitah, it's forbidden to plant in Eretz Yisrael. A farmer who buries bundles of turnips or radishes in the ground during Shemitah does not violate any Isurei Shvius, since burying the bulbs for storage is not considered planting. At the same time, if the bulbs grew new leaves as a result of being in the ground, the new growth is also not asur midrabanan, that asur grain or vegetables and the like that grow on their own during Shemitah. Okay. And not about the obligation to give maasros again when he pulls them out of the ground. If turnips and radishes that had already been gemaisered, had already had their maaser removed from them, and they grew new leaves while stored in the ground, the farmer does not have to separate maasros for them when he later takes them out of the ground. Only what was planted in the ground must be maasered, and these bulbs are not considered planted. V'nitalim b'Shabbos, and they may be pulled out of the ground on Shabbos. Since the bulbs are not considered planted, a person is permitted to remove them from the ground on Shabbos, and it's not forbidden as kaitzer. However, there is an issue with moving the earth on top of them because the earth is muktzah. Therefore, if some of the leaves are sticking up above the ground, they can be pulled out of the ground by the leaves without handling the earth directly. Since no earth is moved by hand, this procedure is mutter. Moving muktzah indirectly is called tiltul min hatzad, and is mutter when it's done for the sake of enabling a person to use something that's mutter. Nevertheless, it's permitted to remove them from the ground on Shabbos only if they have not actually taken root. Once they have taken root, detaching them from the ground would be considered kaitzer. Reaping, which is forbidden on Shabbos, as one of the Lam Tes Malachas. Since he buried them in bundles, it's clear that he did not mean that for them to take root, so therefore they are not considered planted in regard to any of these halachas. If someone plants a grain of wheat and a grain of barley together, klayim. This is the isser of klayim. Rabbi Yehuda says, it's not klayim unless there are at least 2 grains of wheat and a grain of barley, or a grain of wheat and 2 grains of barley, or a grain of wheat and a grain of barley and a grain of spelt. The pasuk that asers klayim, the pasuk where the isser of klayim is learned out of, is sadcha le'sizra klayim. You shall not plant your field klayim. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the word sada, field, is understood to be a place in which something is already growing. The klayim prohibition thus requires a minimum of 3 seeds, 1 grain to characterize a place as a field, the other 2 grains of 2 different types, like wheat and barley, to be klayim. The Tanakama, however, holds that even an empty plat of land can be characterized as a field. Klayim of seeds therefore requires no more than 2 grains of different seeds.